The secret HOKA super shoe is finally out. Let's talk about the HOKA Cielo X1. Even within the running shoe industry, this shoe in particular has been a little bit of a secret over the last few months because HOKA has placed it under embargo. So anyone who did see the shoe before February 1st was not allowed to talk about it, was not allowed to post pictures about it, was not allowed to share specs or anything about it. Now, obviously some pictures did leak online, a lot of people had seen this shoe, but they didn't know the name and they didn't really know what it was. There was speculation it was the Rocket X3 or something along those lines, but I'm here to tell you that this is a totally new super shoe and give you the specs as well as my first thoughts from my very first run in this shoe. Now, as always, I will do a 50-mile update, but seeing as there was so much hype and secrecy behind this shoe, I wanted to make sure that I got a video out just to get you guys some preliminary information in case you want to snag a pair, because chances are they're going to go pretty fast. Starting with the stack height, this is a 39mm heel stack as well as a 32mm forefoot stack for a 7mm heel to toe drop. Now this is really unique for a HOKA because typically HOKAs fall between the 5 or 6 range, so to go all the way up to 7 is considered a high drop for them, but a mid drop overall. From a weight perspective, a men's size 10 comes in at 9.3 ounces, which is slightly actually on the heavier side for a super shoe, but we'll talk a little bit more about if that actually affected the stride when I get to the notes. Just for comparison for you shoe enthusiasts out there, the Nike Alphafly 3 is about 7.5 ounces in a men's size 10, so this is 1.8 roughly ounces heavier than that. Now, coming off the success of the HOKA Rocket X2 with the dual layer PIBA midsoles, this shoe also has a dual layer PIBA midsole with a carbon fiber plate sandwiched between. As you can see, there are some strategic cutouts to maintain stability yet cut weight in the shoe, and the carbon fiber plate has a unique shape which they're calling a winged plate. Similar also to the Rocket X2, the Cielo X1 has a rubber outsole, which is going to make it a little bit more versatile as far as the different terrains or conditions that it can handle. With the Rocket X2, I ran in the rain plenty of times on a track, slippery kind of overall terrain, and the traction did great, so I expect the same with the Cielo X1. Of course, you can assume that because of that, that is where some of the extra weight is kind of added in. So there's the trade-off of potential stability as well as traction compared to the overall weight of the shoe. The upper is going to be a knit upper with an asymmetrical gusseted tongue, which supports some really good lockdown around the foot, so it has more of a sock feel. But there's still some structure in the shoe as far as the ankle counter or the heel counter here, giving you good lockdown and some pretty robust kind of almost plasticky laces that are going to really kind of lock down and stay put in the shoe as well. This shoe retails at $275, which is $25 more than the Rocket X2, which kind of tells you how HOKA is positioning in the market as far as their premium super shoe compared to the Rocket X2, which was already my personal favorite super shoe of last year. Now, so far, I've only gotten about 6 miles in this shoe, so I'm going to hold off on doing a full overall good and overall bad, and rather just give you my first thoughts on my first run. As far as super shoe goes, this is a very stable overall super shoe, which I felt the same about the Rocket X2, and it's why it was one of my favorite super shoes of 2023. Oftentimes with these hyper-responsive foams and these carbon fiber plates, because shoe brands are trying to cut down on weight, they kind of sacrifice some of the stability elements of a shoe, which make it tough for someone who has some overpronation issues, at least on one of their feet like myself. I found that the cutouts on the outsole and midsole were done strategically in a way that even if you do slightly overpronate, you're going to have a lot of stability in this shoe. And as far as stability goes, I didn't have any concerns when it came to running quick or making sharp turns. The workout that I was testing the shoe on were some 400-meter repeats, so I didn't even really get into kind of like a tempo or threshold flow, so it's hard to say how it's going to respond to that, but I'm assuming pretty well considering that's really what it's more built for. But even on 400s, I felt what I would call effortless speed, where the shoe was really doing a lot of the work or taking a lot of work off of my plate and propelling me forward. When running a marathon, the key is trying to run fast yet stay relaxed for as long as possible, and I can say, at least on short spurts, I felt very, very relaxed and didn't feel like I had to really press for my speed, which isn't always true with some speed-oriented shoes. The heel-to-toe transition of this shoe is pretty awesome. I'm actually surprised that it's a 7mm heel-to-toe drop. In fact, I did not know that until I looked at the specs right before this video. I just kind of assumed it was going to be a 5mm heel to toe drop like the Rocket X2, and so knowing that this is a 7, again, is surprising to me because the heel to toe transition, as someone who's more of a heel or midfoot striker, felt really, really smooth, and I just felt like I was gliding across the track. Now, as far as overall concerns or preliminary thoughts, this isn't the fastest shoe that I've ever run in, but it might be the most effortless shoe that I've ever run in. What that means is if you are a very powerful runner, if you have a very springy stride, you may prefer a shoe that you put more energy into but get a lot more responsiveness or return in. That's not to say this isn't responsive. It's a double layer PIBA midsole, so you're going to feel that bounce. It's got a nice carbon fiber plate, so it still has the spring. It's just not the most springy shoe when it comes to super shoes. The only other thing I can say at this point is that those of you who have Achilles issues as far as rubbing with shoes, you may want to consider some thicker socks. The shoe, as you can see, it does kind of curve in instead of having that outward flare, and sometimes that can rub. And I felt some very, very minor rubbing across 5-6 miles. So if you're going the marathon distance, which is what these shoes were designed for, again, you may want to have either some moleskin, some thicker socks, or something to prevent potential rubbing, but still to be seen if that's actually going to be an issue. Now, over the next few days and weeks, you're going to see some massive pushes from HOKA, obviously, for this shoe because this is their premier shoe of 2024. They didn't even show it to people publicly at the running event because it was so locked down. So personally, I'm really excited to run a lot more miles in this shoe. I'm kind of putting this out there and saying that this will probably be the shoe that I run my sub-3 marathon attempt in at Grandma's this June. But again, I have a lot more shoes to test, as you can see here, and we're going to continue to put miles on these shoes. So if you like running shoes, if you want to learn more about running shoes or see a few more running shoe reviews, please hit that like and subscribe button. I'll be releasing reviews for basically all of the shoes that you can see behind me here over the course of the next 2 months. So stay tuned, and thanks for sticking around to the end as always.